Founded in 1729, Arlington Street continues today as a gathering place for progressive people of faith in the greater Boston area and beyond. We are located at the corner of Arlington and Boylston Streets, across from the Public Garden in Boston, Massachusetts. Arlington Street Church, gathered in love and service for justice and peace.
Mother's Day is the biggest day for restaurants every year. It's also the biggest day for florists. But long before that, I want to invite you to come with me to the story of the beginnings of Mother's Day. So come with me to Taylor County, West Virginia, 1858. The relatively new nation is tearing apart at the seams, something we don't know anything about. A woman named Anne Reese Jarvis is pregnant with her 6th child. She has already lost more than one child in infancy, and she's concerned about why so few babies survive in her community. Children are dying at alarming rates of measles, diphtheria, typhoid fever. So she organizes mothers' work clubs so that mothers can keep other mothers from having to say goodbye to their children. They work with local doctors to get care for folks who are suffering from tuberculosis. They lobby to get clean water and safe sewage disposal, raise money for medicine, and to ensure the safety of things like milk. They teach families basic sanitation. The Mothers' Work Clubs are some of the first modern public health organizations in the nation. Then the Civil War breaks out, and the dividing line between North and South runs right through Taylor County. The Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, the B&O, monopoly players, has a major junction in Grafton, West Virginia, making it a strategically important spot for both the Union and the Confederacy as they move their equipment and soldiers. The Mothers' Work Clubs now are at the battlefront, and they immediately and adamantly devote themselves to caring for the wounded on both sides. The mothers insist on crossing enemy lines to nurse the sick and the dying, which the military leaders are not happy with, but the help is needed, and I am guessing the mothers are a formidable force. Soldiers in the area, regardless of their side of the war, know that mothers will feed and clothe them between battles. When the war ends, the people of the county have to find a way to live together. They are Union and Confederate alike. And as you might imagine, that is not easy after losing so many beloveds. Political leaders then turn to Anne Jarvis to help with the calming of social hostilities by bringing together the mothers of those soldiers into what she calls Mothers' Friendship Days. And on the authority of those mothers, the soldiers are asked to give up their resentments and animosity and work together for the healing of the nation. The first Mother's Friendship Day was held in Puntytown, West Virginia in 1868. Jarvis and her fellow organizers forged ahead in spite of threats of violence. Leery soldiers showed up armed to the teeth. Yet the crowd was peaceful. They joined in singing both Dixie and the Star-Spangled Banner before belting out Auld Lang Syne. Witnesses recall veterans weeping and shaking hands, saying, "God bless you, neighbor. Let us be friends again." While Anne Reese Jarvis was organizing mothers in Virginia, Unitarian activist Julia Ward Howe was writing and attending meetings and causes to support abolition and women's suffrage in Boston. Her renown as a writer made friends reach out to her for the words to a song to support the Union cause, which in 1862 became the banger we know as the Battle Hymn of the Republic. Her fame as a result of penning those lyrics offered her the platform for speaking for the cause of lasting peace after the Civil War, which is why we still have the words of the Mother's Day proclamation you heard earlier. And we know she was a true Unitarian because her rousing words exhort her listeners to get a committee together. Her version of Mother's Day was celebrated for some 30 years, centered in Boston on June 2nd every year. But a national Mother's Day itself wasn't established until Anne Reese Jarvis's daughter, confusingly Anna Jarvis, advocated for a day of remembrance of mothers, most especially her own mother, who organized so many other mothers. So a few years after her mother's death, Anna persuaded the minister at her church to initiate a service in honor of mothers. She passed out white carnations to the congregation, her mother's favorite flower, and one whose folds she thought perfectly symbolized the embrace of a loving mother. She had also, the same day, persuaded John Wanamaker to do a day of remembrance for mothers, and he became instrumental in gathering support for her as she spoke to a crowd of 1,500 people in the auditorium of the Wanamaker's department store in downtown Philadelphia. By 1914, President Woodrow Wilson had proclaimed the second Sunday of May to be Mother's Day. And by then, even that early, from 1908 to 1914, the growing consumer culture had successfully redefined women as the primary shoppers in their families. And the First World War, raging across the Atlantic, put a lot of pressure on mothers to express their patriotism by sending their boys to war. Politicians and businessmen eagerly embraced the idea of celebrating the private sacrifices made by individual mothers. The Florist's Review, the industry trade journal of the time, wrote, "This was a holiday that could be exploited." I can only read that as cartoon villain, I'm sorry. And so they did. This was a cause of deep grief for Anna Jarvis, not what she had intended at all, to the point that she ended up spending her family inheritance on dozens of lawsuits to undo the commercialization of the holiday. Her success in making Mother's Day an international phenomenon was born of connecting with those powerful business and government interests that could make it so, and those interests in turn undid its power and its beauty. It's a heartbreaking story. All around the world, throughout human history, there's a place for the unique divinity of the feminine, the one who brings life, the part of humanity that has the power of God or gods or spirit to bring forth new life. The Hindu goddess Kali, the Chinese goddess Kuan Yin, several of the Greek and Roman goddesses all contain not just the power of compassion and creation, but the power to demand what is just, and if necessary, do some destruction in order to make it so. And those divine feminine images are not confined to traditional female representation. Most of them, in fact, slide along a continuum between the traditional male and female, drawing power across the gender spectrum. There is no doubt that there's a deep connection between the power of creation and the power of justice. When we emphasize only one, the creative, nurturing side, the romantic perfection side, we set up a dangerous level of expectation for people who bear or raise children. And we deny the greatest gift of perspective that comes with love that deep, the desire to protect not just our own children, but all children. That's why we in the sanctuary this morning are in solidarity with our friends and neighbors walking in the Mother's Day Walk for Peace in Dorchester. Some are just returned from it. It's an outgrowth of Tina Cherry's compassionate example as a mother who lost her son, Louis D. Brown, to street violence when he was 15. In her own grief, Tina built a connection with her son's killer and began connecting with other families who had lost children to violence. The Louis D. Brown Peace Institute was born to help grieving families who were often blamed implicitly or explicitly for their children's deaths. Help with funeral expenses, grief counseling, community connection has been expanded to add peace education, a curriculum involving 7 principles of peace that are taught in youth groups, schools, and clubs to support alternatives to violence. You will not meet a more gentle, gracious, and faith-filled presence than Tina. And I also know that that demeanor of grace is rooted in a very righteous grief and anger that she has thoughtfully, carefully transformed into a force for creative, generative love. People walking today are building community, connecting with streets that many of them would not otherwise have gone into, and raising money to fuel the cause of peace, person to person. How about that for Mother's Day? Hi, sweeties. The essence of motherhood belongs to us all, every gender, whether we are called parents or not, and it includes that creative power born of our inward spirit that's profound and seems magical no matter how many times we see it happen. The passion and the drive that come from it, as well as the protective spirit that rises in us when what is precious to us is threatened. And oh, so much that is precious to us is threatened these days, my friends. So how can we reclaim some of that fierceness, the Julia Ward Howe and the Anne Reese Jarvis? Anne Lamott writes, Mother's Day feels incomplete and imprecise. The main thing that ever helped mothers was other people mothering them, including aunties and brothers, a chain of mothering that keeps the whole shebang afloat. I am the woman I grew to be, she writes, partly in spite of my mother, who unconsciously raised me to self-destruct, and partly because of the extraordinary love of her best friends, my own best friends' mothers, and from surrogates, many of whom were not women at all, but gay men. I've loved them my entire life, including my mom, even after their passing. No one is more sentimentalized in America than mothers on Mother's Day, but no one is more often blamed for the culture's bad people and behavior. You want to give me chocolate and flowers? Great, I love them both. I just don't want them out of guilt, and I don't want them if you're not going to give them to all the people who have helped mother children. But if you're going to include everyone, make mine something like M&Ms, and maybe flowers you picked yourself, even from my own garden. The cut stems wrapped in wet paper towels, then tinfoil in a wax paper bag from my kitchen drawers. I don't want something special. I want something beautifully plain. Like everything else, it can fill me only if it is ordinary and available to all. That lasting peace, that spirit of justice that we want to have ordinary and available to all. When we think of the visionary spirit of the forebears who created Mother's Day to end wars and make lasting peace, and we look at the statistics of our own consumerism and political machinations, while reproductive rights are being rolled back by a century, wars are rampant around the world, it feels very, very late. But as the poet reminds us, everything comes next. Let us remember our mothers for their beauty and strength and passions and flaws. Let us remember the quickening of the creative spirit in ourselves and all the many forms it takes. Let us remember the Divine Mother, the creative force that made all of our lives possible and keeps this planet's life-giving powers at play, no matter how much we do our worst. Let us fiercely defend and protect the power to see ourselves connected, to build peace, not by avoiding conflict, but by recognizing the holy thread woven through us all. May we hear and heed the call of the mothers rising up to demand an end to gun violence, for attention to climate change, for reproductive justice, and yes, for an end to war. May we join in solidarity to draw from the place in our brains where hate won't grow, and stay in the mess long enough to dream up the creative solutions that can save us all. May we know this community as a place where we hold the stories of struggle as a sacred part of what it is to be connected. And may that connection invite us to be moved by the fierceness of love to acts of kindness, compassion, and demands for justice in our world. So may it be. Amen. Friends, for our benediction, I invite you to picture all of those who will not be left behind, and raise your hands, palms out, or zoomers on the sides of your squares touching one another, and send loving kindness out to all of those we want to scoop up and take with us to that land of peace and justice and possibility and freedom. And as you feel yourself also being held by others wanting to bring you along, I invite you to scoop all of that goodness, all of that love up, and bring your hands to heart center and feel that love that you will carry with you through this week ahead. I invite you to go forth to nurture, to challenge, to make change, to find hope in one another, in our greatest joys and our deepest struggles. May we dig deep for a future that brings new life from the brink of death and forges lasting peace that makes us whole. Let us keep this faith, dear ones, until we meet again. Pass it on every time we can. The service begins when the service ends. Amen.
2, 3, 4.
Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine.
We are located at the corner of Arlington and Boylston Streets, across from the Public Garden in Boston, Massachusetts. Arlington Street Church, gathered in love and service for justice and peace.